Hi everyone, my name is Phillips. I'm a reporter for HBUNC Media Group. We've all heard about how important it is to vote this year in this upcoming election. Locally, we're seeing housing crises and climate change. Federally, we have our first POC woman on the ballot, and as well as our former president. And nationally, we're seeing many marginalized groups and their rights being threatened. Today, we're sitting down with UNC's Union of Black Men to discuss the importance of voting, as well as how they spread this awareness from coast to coast. So first of all, thank you all for coming to have this interview with HBUNC. So first, I want you to all go down the line. Could you introduce yourself, your name, your year, if you already graduated, what your major was when you were a student, and what you're currently doing now. So we can start with you.
Okay, I'll start. My name is Caldwell. I was UNC class of 2024, where I was a business administration major at Keenan Flagler. I'm also an entrepreneurship minor in the Shuford program, and I'm currently living in Nashville, working out there. So doing a little bit of that post-grad adult life now, getting used to that, but definitely enjoying my time at Carolina and spending time with these guys for sure.
Okay.
Christopher Williams. I am a senior. I was about to say hopefully class of 2025. I will be class of 2025. I am the undergraduate student body vice president, majoring in peace war defense with a minor in entrepreneurship as well. So following the footsteps of these two gentlemen who got a minor in entrepreneurship from the amazing Shuford program.
Okay.
I'm Chandler Robinson, class of 2024. I majored in computer science with a minor in entrepreneurship.
You said that kind of scarily. Computer science put you through something.
It did. It was trauma.
It still is.
Yeah.
He'll tell you about some of his coworkers later, but we can't say that.
No, come out together. Currently, I work in tech down in Charlotte at a bank.
Okay. Okay, so over the summer, HBUNC was following your cross-country road trip where you talked to people across the country about voter registration and issues related to voter registration. So we kind of just wanted to know what inspired this trip, how you got to this point, and kind of what the process of preparing for that was.
I can start. It was kind of a conversation around the dinner table, honestly. Just trying to figure out how we can make our summer meaningful. Last bit of time we were really together before me and Chandler went off and started working and they started their senior years. So trying to figure out how we can make our summer meaningful with the upcoming election especially, and trying to use our voices to impact people positively, especially in the Black community. And so, I don't know, we kind of just landed on the idea of doing voter education and awareness and then spreading it nationally.
And I think to that question of the process, one, it was a taxing process. it was taxing. And we all lived together when we were planning it all out, so we probably didn't get much space from each other when we were planning it. So we got a little irritated. We had about 2 weeks to raise about in the beginning the initial $20,000 that we needed to be able to get the RV that we took and all of those different things planned so that we could actually do the trip. So we had this place we have in our house called the studio, and it was also the place where Men in Motion 2, right? Men in Motion 2 was released. Can I say that? But we've done a lot of stuff there, but we were literally just in the same spot all day.
War room.
Yes, that was the war room. Just typing away, sending emails, creating GoFundMes, all of that stuff. So it was a collective effort. We were tapping in with family members. If you've seen the movie Draft Day, where they're just on the phone, just calling different people, that's how it felt. It was really fun though. It was stressful because of all the no's we heard, but it was also even more inspiring because even after all the no's, we sort of would come together and be like, you know what, we're still going to do this either way. And so I think that goes to the team that we had, and Ashley, who's not here today, but who was also a big part, and then the rest of our line as well. We're all members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and so it started there, and then also a lot of the members in the Union of Black Men at UNC, which is what this was ultimately through. So it was a great team behind us.
And I'll say that we did hear a lot of, you guys don't have enough time to pull this off. You can push it off to a later date and really plan more. We really didn't want to hear that, and we couldn't because of our schedules constraints. With Chandler was starting work very soon after the trip ended, and so we really just had to knock everything out in 2 weeks, and it was a lot of work. But I'm glad we persevered and saw it through and just made it happen.
Okay. Was there any particular reason you decided on an RV trip instead of just catching flights?
I think that RV trip made it possible for us to hit a lot of different locations. There's a lot of states where we feel like the vote's going to be very close this year, and we know that, especially like within our community, the Black community, voter turnout can be low at some points. And we wanted to go to a lot of the spots where we can really make a difference by speaking on those important issues. So,
and if I can add to that, I think we can just never do anything the easy way. We had to always do the harder way. And to some extent, it was like a challenge for us. One, can we do this in an RV, which was maybe a bit more costly? Two, can we have one last hurrah together, living so intimately, which was, I don't know if I can do that again. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit later into the interview, but that was the second thing. But thirdly, I think, so this is related in that there was a YouTube streaming video that had just come out when we were doing this. It was with Drewski and I believe Kai Sinat. And I think they broke the record for like how many people were tuned into their streaming channel, and all they were doing was living life. And we're like, okay, how can we capture that and bring it into the framework of voting in a way that engages you so that they are coming along on a journey? And the RV sort of played into that a bit more than I think just flying from spot to spot. We did ultimately have to do that towards the end, but yeah.
And it's interesting because it started off, we're doing promotional content on TikTok, Instagram, Reels, and stuff like that. So some of our first videos are kind of just like, welcome to our home for the next 2 weeks. Like, this is where we're going to be living, operating, working, all that, and that's really what it turned into. Yeah. So,
okay. Cool. So how long was this trip, and which places did you visit while you were on this trip?
Too long.
Wasn't it always supposed to be like 18 days in the beginning or 15? It was jumped to 21.
It ended up being 20 days.
20, yeah.
Or 21?
It's like June 18th through July.
I don't know. I did not need to travel for some time after that. Okay. Yeah. Even though we still ended up doing our own travel after that, but
it was a summer of travel, but about 3 weeks, I think.
Okay.
And so obviously started in North Carolina. RV took off from Chapel Hill, and then we went through the South, through Atlanta, Birmingham, Baton Rouge, then into Texas, at Houston, San Antonio, Tucson and Phoenix in Arizona. And then our last stops in the RV were San Diego and LA. And then our trip was altered due to complications with the vehicle, but we had to fly to Chicago, fly to DC, and then fly back home.
So the RV got us from coast to coast, but
we're actually stranded in LA for about 5 days.
We know LA, front and back,
which is not good because that's when the prices were really starting to hit. And
right.
Gas
cities to be stranded in. Yeah.
Gas. What was it, like $6? But I mean, I want to mention sort of going into like the pre-trip work. Like if those places that we went to, they weren't random. They had low voter turnout based off of the research we did, and so it was pretty grueling doing the research to identify that so that we could target those areas of low engagement in the 18 to 25 demographic. So, and there I would say Isaiah, he did a lot of that research going into it in the beginning, so that was some good stuff.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So I understand that all of you are members of all of you are members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and they have an initiative called A Voteless People is a Hopeless People. So what I just wanted to know is, how did this initiative play into this trip? How did it influence it? How did it inspire you? And how did it impact
Well, yeah, that national program shows one thing, and it shows how important just voter education and voter encouragement has been within Alpha from the very beginning. Of course, when we were planning this trip, we were kind of looking back into like some of the things that our fraternity brother, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. did, and how it was only 70 years ago when, you know, our people were literally fighting for our right to vote. And nowadays it feels like something that's taken for granted. And people don't really like to exercise their voice. So we wanted to carry on, you know, that legacy, and continue to hold that standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and I'll touch on, like, right before we left, we actually did, with Black Voters Matter, we did, it was like a voter registration drive.
Souls.
Souls to the polls type of
Yeah.
thing in Durham, starting at Hillside, I believe, and going around that part of Durham. And so getting a taste of that and like going to some of these, I feel like underrepresented communities, in places where people are not actively engaging in these political processes as much, and seeing just like the impact you can have just by showing up and trying, getting people registered.
Heavy on showing up.
Yeah,
Heavy on showing up.
and that's the biggest part. You just gotta show up, and people will hear you out, listen, and people understand, I think, the right to vote, but they're not feeling like it's impacting their lives. And so talking with these 18 and 25-year-olds all across the country, especially like some of these college freshmen, incoming freshmen, they're like, I don't see why I need to vote. I don't see why my vote matters. And so just hearing all these perspectives and encouraging these young people to get out and use their voice was really important to us.
On the road trip, it was actually pretty surprising because when we were engaging with people our age, they actually wanted to talk to us about it. I don't know if it was because we were, you know, I'm a pretty handsome guy. I don't know if it's because of that. or because like they wanted, and honestly, I think they wanted this avenue to like actually communicate with people about this, like have discourse on it, as opposed to people just going out during election season trying to get their vote really quickly and then run off. They wanted someone to actually engage with them, and this allowed for that. And so that goes back to this idea of the voteless people, hopeless people, and showing up.
Okay. So while you were speaking and meeting with people in different places, were there different thoughts or ideologies that came up, or like were specific to certain communities that you noticed?
I'll go back to, I remember specifically in Arizona, we were talking with some incoming college freshmen, so people that had maybe just turned 18 or turning 18 before this upcoming election, so they had no previous voting experience, and hearing some of their perspectives, like, well, no, I'm not registered to vote, it really wasn't encouraged in my household growing up, and just understanding kind of that why and how that's, you know, continuing to influence their decisions, was really interesting. And then, I don't know, comparing that to some of the more, I guess, senior people that we spoke with, and, you know, asking questions like, do you remember your first time voting and how that made you feel? And just seeing some of the disparities was really interesting. And then sharing some of the messages we learned from the older people with the younger people, just to provide that encouragement and education, and especially harping on the fact that it's not just about the presidential election. Like, there's so many other things that you can use your voice to vote for, and that impacts you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Isaiah said, definitely not only just talking to people at different points in their life, but also different levels of government. And for example, we talked to a mayor in Georgia, and she kind of talked about how mayor elections, people don't really show up to those. But there's so many different things on the city level that she has a say on.
Those potholes.
Driving trash, other things like that that affect you literally every single day. That people don't even go out and pick who's representing for them. And then we also talked to Secretary of State in California. So that's on the like state government level. And she talked about how each vote, you're showing the people, oh yeah, like this demographic really shows up. So if you really want them to come and listen to like who you are and people that share similar backgrounds as you, then you have to show up to vote because they know that you're going to show up to the polls and affect the decision.
And then, while we're on the topic, were there any people that you met on your trip that you feel like were really impactful to you personally as a person, or like your thoughts on voting?
You know, there's two people. One, Governor Westmore, who I'm happy to say also our fraternity brother, Brother Westmore. He happened early on in the trip, and he impacted me, I think, in two ways. One, we were getting a lot of no's at this point still. We hadn't left yet.
We hadn't raised the money.
We hadn't raised the money yet, and we were like, oh gosh. In our head, we never gave voice to this, but we were like, I don't know if we can make it. And then we started to have people closer in our space sort of say, okay, maybe if you shifted a little bit. And so that was frustrating. And then we went to this rally, and Governor Westmore was there. And, we had some ins with some of the rally organizers, so they made sure we got a little bit of time with him. And his words saying, first of all, we shall transcend all, which is something very deep with Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And in addition to that, sort of giving us encouragement as we go on and capturing it on video, being able to send that out, that sort of gave us a lot of the support that we needed initially to, one, keep going, and two, for people to give. So that was pretty impactful. It sort of told me the idea of, okay, sometimes it takes certain people saying certain things for certain things to move. The second person who really impacted me, California Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber. I think that was my favorite interview. I could have sat with her a whole another 2-3 hours and all that. She's a really cool person, a professor as well, and by training before getting into like politics. And what she had spoke about was this idea of, and I say it in a lot of different settings, but that it is important to bring your people with you. When you are voting, you don't just vote as an individual. You need to vote as a coalition of people so that you can support the people that you want to see representing your interests. And so that was really impactful. Her whole video is on our YouTube page, and she covers some great stuff. Oh man, there was another. I forgot our general president. he was amazing too.
He was strong. I remember very well Dee Reed. She was with Black Voters Matter, and that was our second stop in Birmingham. So we were just getting started. We didn't know, really what the trip was going to turn into at that point. But speaking with her, obviously getting that concept, but hearing her like wisdom, that's something she works in every day. It was a real momentum builder for us. Helped build our excitement. We were like, this was a really good interview. We can really see what we're doing here and how it's going to impact people and positively affect people with our, video distribution and things like that. So that definitely helped us build momentum and just like say we're doing real stuff here.
And shout out to Birmingham, Alabama, because I didn't think it was going to be as nice as it was. Can I say that?
But I would say for me, definitely our general president, Dr. Willis Lorenzo III. We saw him on the tail end. And he gave us that extra motivation to go out and finish strong. And he was proud of a lot of things that we had done up until that point. So that meant coming from our general president of the organization. So that was definitely important for me. I know for my brothers.
Some people, particularly people of color, say that when it comes to voting, they feel like their vote doesn't matter. So based off of your trip and what you learned, what would you say to them?
I would like to piggyback off of something I said earlier. Certain demographics, especially when we're underrepresented, we add more power to our vote when we actually go out and exercise the right. And that's because politicians will see. They'll see when we show up to polls. They'll see when we have 80, 90% voter turnout. And they'll say, all right, we need to cater more to this demographic. We need to listen to them in off years so that by the time the election year comes around, that they'll vote for us. And so, one thing that's really important for everybody to know, if you're not at the table, you'll be on the menu.
I think Brother Lonzo said that, didn't he?
He did.
He did, yeah, in our interview.
Shout out to Brother President.
No, that's good. And just touching on what we said earlier as well, just there's so many different ways you can vote that matter. And so when we were doing our trip, it was at the time Trump versus Biden.
Yeah.
Obviously, Biden stepped out, and now Kamala Harris is running. But there's so many other ways in your counties and in your states that you can vote that will impact your daily lives, as Chandler was saying earlier. So your voice always matters, and just exercising that right to vote, getting out, doing it in groups, inspiring your friends to do it as well, and building that energy and momentum is super important when it comes to voting.
I think one of the most dangerous things that happens is when you start to believe, and I'm going to say this and you've heard it, but one of the most dangerous things that can happen is when you believe that your voice doesn't matter. That's really a trick of the opposition. That's a trick of those who want to sort of keep power for themselves, operate in silence, that they want you to buy into. If you buy into it, you've already lost. And there's something that Dr. Weber, California Secretary of State, said when we were interviewing her. And she said, those who you really believe and know are going to represent you well, if you don't vote for them, they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable to the attacks of those who are trying to silence them. They're vulnerable to not be elected in the next cycle, and then they can't do anything for you. And you don't have your representative pushing for what you want to see, and then you're not better off. Yeah. And those around you are not better off. You have to engage, because otherwise you're not keeping this democratic society accountable to the people.
Okay. And then, as you mentioned, when you went on this trip, it was Joe Biden versus Trump. Now that it's changed and it's currently Trump versus Kamala Harris, do you think that that's changed anything when it comes to voting, especially for like young voters of color?
I think it has added a lot more excitement. I just, even in terms of like the ads that are going out, I think it's definitely more so, from what I've seen, with one candidate catered towards the younger crowd, maybe by nature of that candidate being younger, and things of this nature. But I have seen sort of like a mindset change in a lot of the spaces that I'm in, that reflects more youth wanting to engage. And I do frame my answer in a way to say, like, we are nonpartisan.
Yeah.
In collaboration with Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Black Voters Matter, Union of Black Men. So sort of navigating the space in a way that reflects that is important too, because we want you to just vote. But yeah.
I would like to piggyback on what he said. I do think that we see a lot more excitement from younger people. And I think that's really showing why representation matters so much. You see somebody who more closely represents who you are as a person, your ideals, you're going to get more excited about the things that they're discussing in the election cycle, and the issues that you're going to be voting on. But again, we have to exercise our right to vote to pave the way for more people that represent us.
Yeah, and I know a lot of responses we heard from, especially the younger crowd on our trip, was, we're voting for either one or the other very old candidates who don't, closely align with the life that I'm living. They don't really care about, what I'm going through and the things that matter to me. And so now that that's kind of shifted, it would be interesting to see like what we would hear from these younger crowds if we did this trip today.
No, we can't.
No, it's not happening. But like, if it was, not Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, but Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, and hearing why people are, afraid to vote or feel like they don't want to engage, it was primarily because they were like, I don't know who to vote for. It's lesser of two evils. We heard that a lot. It's like there's no point in voting. That's what a lot of people said.
And then, do you think that it's changed anything for you on a personal level when it comes to voting, or your attitude about voting?
I think for me, and I say this all the time, like the old guy in the room reminiscing, No, I'm not the old guy. One second. Okay, anyway. I got a new beauty for American society. And sort of like the diversity of this country. Just riding, 15-hour days, 13-hour days in the RV, just seeing the different landscapes, meeting the new types of people, hearing how people sound. I'm not sound in terms of how they put words together, like their accents. I'm like, wow, you're really different. You're not where I come from. And different isn't bad. I'm just saying you're just different from what I know. And so that gave me a whole new appreciation for, like, one, trying to make this whole great experiment, if you will, work. And the fact that we are still going, and I pray we'll continue to still go in this path, is something that I got I have a lot of appreciation for, because we are making it work with the diversity that is in this country.
Okay. And then my next question, so you mentioned earlier that you did a lot of the research for the trip. Could you just share a little bit about like what that research looked like, what you learned, anything that was maybe like surprising or like, I didn't know that about your research?
Definitely when trying to identify cities and the whole route, finding places, because our target demographic was 18 and 25-year-olds. Primarily black individuals, but if we could go beyond that and just target that age range, that was the main goal. And so finding that across the country in each place, voter turnout, voter engagement, it fluctuates. But for this 18 and 25-year-old demographic, it's been, pretty low within the past few years. And so finding the reasons why for each place, learning about Birmingham, Alabama, and seeing that their black population was not voting as much, but going to Tucson, Arizona, and seeing that some of their, maybe Hispanic populations weren't voted as much. It was interesting to find out. And obviously, once you go to some of those regions of the country, you don't have as many black people. That's just how it works. But still finding ways to be impactful with our target demographic and helping people share their message, because as we said earlier, people come from so many different backgrounds. People may not be encouraged to vote by their family because that's just how their family has worked traditionally, but finding ways to just impact them and influence them to vote.
Okay. And then Isaiah and Chandler, being a couple of months out from school, would you say that your perspective on voting has changed as like you're entering the workforce and like you're out of college?
Yeah, what do the adults in the workplace say about voting? Do they even? It doesn't
get talked about.
It does get talked about my job.
Really interesting. Really?
Yeah, I mean, because of course, the rallies were going on, and being in Charlotte and North Carolina is such a big battleground state. Both candidates have been to Charlotte, I think, twice. So almost every other week, you have there's. This highway is closed off and all this traffic. So naturally, the conversation gets brought up. I think
we're mad about the highway shutting down.
I mean, but then we actually started talking about the different candidates, the policies, or like the day after the debate, I remember we had a discussion. It wasn't really like people going back and forth. We were just talking about what like each candidate talked about. And so I would say it's much different. Of course, being in college, I'm around my friends. I've been around my friends for 4 years, around my community. And so, the voices start to, like everybody's saying similar things. But in the workforce, everybody has such different lives. On my team, I have, people that have kids, people that have grandkids. And so, of course, their opinion, their perspective is going to be much different than mine. And people from all different backgrounds. And so I would say, like, going into adult life, you just see so much more of that diversity. You're like, oh, okay. Because sometimes it's kind of hard to imagine who would vote for X, Y, and Z,
What's the craziest thing you've heard regarding politics in the workplace? And have you heard anything crazy?
I haven't heard anything crazy yet, no.
Craziest thing?
Or just like that made you have to sit down for a second, like that took you back? Or has it happened yet?
I haven't heard anything that crazy yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the episode of The Office or something.
Yeah. No, thankfully not. I haven't heard anything that crazy. I want to know how I handle it.
for me, it hasn't been brought up much, at least in the work culture. The church I've been going to, they've been very engaged with getting people registered and engaged with those democratic processes. But I think it's, to a certain extent, like, not frowned upon, but people don't want to bring it up at work. People want to go in and, do what they're supposed to do, get their stuff done, and not engage in these conversations that could get maybe heated or, people start debating and people want to stay away from that.
And then you mentioned that you're hearing a lot more perspectives. Would you say that that's challenging, not hearing like people who more or less have similar views and are coming from similar points as you?
I think it can be challenging to try to keep that open mind, but I think it's also it's a great experience because you get to literally see why different people vote in different ways, and to hear different stories. Like, everybody has a story, and their story matters to them. So I can't just invalidate them because it's different than my background. And so it's a great experience to be able to hear so many diverse opinions and views, and be able to all right, you can see how you can meet people in the middle. You can see how you can try, find common ground with people more when you actually hear different perspectives and different views.
Okay. So now I just want to get a little bit more personal into the trip itself, especially for other students who want to, maybe not necessarily a road trip, but want to plan a similar impactful experience. So Jess, could you say what you would suggest them if they're interested in doing that, some of the steps that you went through a little bit more, and then also if you could add on maybe some setbacks that you faced during the process that you would want other people to be aware of?
Well, first thing, if you are doing a road trip, probably a smaller vehicle is better. I'll say that first. An RV is not for the faint of heart in the slightest. I mean, from driving it. Sorry, I'm reminiscing right there.
Almost flipped over one time.
Exactly. Empty. One good gust of wind. Mayday.
The gray one and the black one.
Oh yeah. What is the correct terminology? Dumping
the
fecal matter.
Yes.
Is that appropriate? I'm sorry. I mean, I had to turn my. So
that was nasty.
Yeah. If you're going to do a trip, really, if you're going to do an RV, it's probably better to have someone who is devoted to driving. That's probably professional. But shorten the time. Don't just, if you haven't done an RV trip before, I don't think any of us have, then you should probably not jump into it and do a straight 23-week stretch or something of that nature. Maybe like a weekend or 5 days or something of that nature. That's the first thing. I think that as well, if you're trying to fundraise for it, it's going to be a lot of asking. Just ask.
Follow up.
Yeah. Follow up. Oh yeah. Just wanted to follow up here, give phone calls, and at some point, don't be ashamed about it. At first, you're going to be a bit nervous because I'm man, I'm asking them for money, and it's always hard asking people for money. But the work that you're doing is great, and you have the evidence to back it up. We had the presentations, we had all these things, so just be ready to back it up with evidence, but don't be ashamed to ask. I think in addition to that, just expect there to be some hurdles, whatever that may be. Whether that be, we don't like how you presented this spreadsheet. Change it up all over, put a design on it, and send it over. We want a presentation now. We want y'all to come meet up with us. Blah, 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 blah. We need an 11 p.m. meeting to discuss. Don't go into it saying, this is the product and whatnot. You have to be flexible with the hurdles, and just, if you want to make this happen, you got to jump over it. You got to take the crickets with the straights in that regard. I think that's what I would say.
I would say if you want to do anything similar, even if it's not an RV trip, even if it's not voter education, if you want to spread a message about something that's meaningful to you, I would say don't be discouraged. Because he talked about fundraising earlier. I wasn't head on any fundraising, to believe me, but I did hear a lot of the conversations, and there's so many no's. You know what I'm saying? But it only took a couple yeses to change everything.
Yeah. Build-A-Bear. that was a great shout out Build-A-Bear.
But yeah, it only takes a couple yeses to change the entire situation and really make a difference. So don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged when a couple people disagree with you, when a couple people say this is not a good idea. If you have a plan set in place, follow forward, you know, and follow through and just try to get it done. And continue to reach out, depend on your network, and reach out to anybody who will have any type of inkling to care. And eventually, you know, you'll find those yeses that will change everything.
And it's getting me excited because when those yeses follow through and the trip happens or the event happens, it's good.
Yeah.
Like, it's great. Like, there's still like little arguments that we have when there's no air conditioning and all that. There's always something that happens, but it's good. The work is good. Like, oh man, it just gets me excited thinking about it. Like the fact that we were sitting in a house before it even happened. Like, this is just one of the most ambitious things. Why are y'all doing this outside the wall, off the wall thing? And then we do it. Yeah, it's good.
And we're asking ourselves these same questions, like, what are we even doing? What do we get ourselves into?
Yeah.
And then always, you know, we have a plan B, but we're not thinking about it at all. Like, we're set on our initial goal of raising X amount of money to do it this way. And, you know, everyone's in our ear saying, I think you should pivot. I think you should change.
Did someone say we were like, were y'all high at the dinner table?
But no, we hear you, but we're doing what we're doing, and we're going to do it how we want to. So just being, you know, having that determination and really putting it all together.
Okay. And then just going on this road trip, like obviously RV, pretty enclosed space. How did that impact your relationship over like the course of, I think you said 3 weeks?
Yeah. There were there were some crash out.
Oh my God. Mississippi
mid recording sessions. Things did get intense.
Let me tell you, this man usually does not get irritated when he's a level-headed guy. He's over here raising his voice at me, giving his smart remarks. I'm like,
rightfully
what?
So.
No.
Rightfully so. It was all just.
I was shocked.
Yeah. We definitely. I mean, we grew very close with the planning process, with being on that RV. The four of us against the world is what it seemed like.
I wish Ashley was here right now because he would have chimed in on this.
He would have said something.
My gosh.
I already know. Definitely got closer, just going through some of those highs and lows. And then when we have a great interview, a great day, it's just like everything feels right. And it's like, yeah, this is what we were meant to be doing. We just got to keep going. So,
yeah, I would say that's something that I know I'll never forget. That trip, I'm gonna be telling my kids, my grandkids about it. And like you said, we did definitely get closer through a lot of those shared experiences. But there's, you know, of course, ups and downs. Of course, we had great triumphs. We also had a point where we almost died.
So you can do that later.
So yeah, definitely got closer over the course of everything, and really learned a lot about one another.
Okay.
we got to see Inside Out too.
Oh man, yes. Like I would not do this with anyone else. And I think maybe it helped because we were already line brothers, but it was.
We had a great team.
Amazing memories.
People specializing in different areas. That's another important part, like crafting your team and knowing, you know, Ashton, great with video and social media, stuff like that. Chris, having all of his connections and reaching out to people. Chandler, just logistics, being there, being a strong presence, being a voice. And so just having that team, putting everything together. And just
Chandler won't play about those logistics. Where are we? Are we going here next? I need the address.
So everything just worked out the way it was supposed to. Yeah.
Do any of you have like a story or like one memory from the trip that you like really like to share that you feel like that's just like this was the trip?
This was the trip.
This was the trip.
Maybe we need one to encapsulate the bad times and one to encapsulate the good. Wow.
I think so. Our RV did break down in LA, so we spent a whole day, literally from maybe 9 a.m. until 10 p.m. in the hotel lobby, trying to figure out how are we going to get to our next spot. We had to be in Denver, I think, the next day for a meeting. And so we're sitting in the hotel lobby trying to figure out everything. Are we going to get a rental car? Are we going to fly? Are we going to even make it to Denver? And then, just finally realizing, hey, we're going to have to skip this, but we're going to Chicago. And we have one of probably our most important meetings of this entire trip with our general president. And just seeing how we got through that moment and didn't let it, deter us from our goal. And we probably had one of our best interviews when we got to Chicago. Just touching on like that determination aspect of the trip, and still knowing that we have a goal and these minor setbacks are not going to hinder us from achieving that. So
I would say our day in Alabama. I would say our day in Birmingham, it was, I think, by the time we woke up that morning, it was kind of developed. But it was one of those things where we kind of just, we were led, almost seems like, I don't know, it was just written so perfectly how that day went. Because we start off with an interview. We went to, was it the Black History Museum?
Civil Rights.
Civil Rights History Museum. Of course, that was just a great experience, seeing like the history behind everything, the history behind the movement. And then we met with the president of the Alumni Alpha chapter down there, and had a great interview with him. And then afterwards, we're kind of just, hanging around the alumni chapter, talking to different brothers about what we're doing. And then I remember that the day before we ran out of shirts, Black Voters Matter shirts, because we were in Atlanta. And it just so happened somebody with a Black Voters Matter shirt just walks up while we're hanging out with the alumni chapter. And they're like, oh yeah, like what y'all doing? And we just, chatted up. And they eventually say, hey, like y'all can meet with my boss right now. And then that's how we were able to meet with D. And then from that, another great interview came. And also we were able to get more supplies to be able to hand out more Black Voters Matter merchandise. And so it was almost like that day was just, it was one thing after another, and we didn't even expect it to end the way that it did when we first started.
What did you say? And you said this in Alabama, like God's favor on us or something.
Ordering our steps.
Ordering our steps.
Yeah.
Heavy on ordering our steps. Like, obviously, within like a 2-week, 3-week time frame of trying to plan it before, like, we couldn't get everything planned. So even on the road, we were still making calls, planning for the days ahead, all of that stuff. And God was literally ordering our steps. And then, I'm blanking on that. John Lewis, Congressman, the late Congressman John Lewis, he has this quote, I realized after the trip, getting into good trouble. And so that was sort of one of the mantras of the trip. How can we get into good trouble? Whether it be just making random phone calls, being in places that we otherwise wouldn't be in to give ourselves that opportunity. Like those two stories, I think, really, really sort of encapsulate that. I'm sorry I won't add, but.
Yeah, okay. And then for each of you, what would you say was your biggest takeaway from this trip as a whole and everything you learned?
I would like to think we're all pretty high achievers, and we like to think, we're kind of limitless in what we can do, but actually seeing it play out in something this big, and like we said, such a short time frame for planning and everything, and just seeing how like really beautiful the whole experience can be. Even Ashton wasn't there when we left. He joined us in, Atlanta. But just seeing how we can, run into the right people at the right times, how receptive people are going to be, all across the country. We were meeting up with people who had a whole cookout for us in San Diego. Yeah. So welcoming and just like, I guess proud of like the initiative we took and just putting all this work together. I don't know, it's just an amazing experience, and just knowing that anything you really put your mind to, you can achieve?
I think for me, I'm a preacher's kid, so I think in scripture sometimes, in quotes. And there's a scripture, I don't know what book in the Bible, I don't know what verse, whatever, but it essentially goes, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I'll be in the midst. Yeah. And that sort of goes to this idea of order our steps. Before we left for the trip, we went to New Hope Church. My father was there. Isaiah, you were there at that point, and a few others from the community. Jerome, yeah. So some of our good brothers were there, and we prayed for journey mercies, ordering our steps, all of that stuff. And then we were off. Didn't know everything we were getting into, but we got into some stuff, and we kept God in the center of the work that we were doing, and it worked out in the way that it was always supposed to, and we got an even better result than I think any of us could have even imagined. Interpersonally, on the scale of reaching other individuals, and there's probably some we don't even know that we reached and impacted, and them impacting us. Like it was full circle thing, and so that was the biggest takeaway. This idea of gathering together, and then community. Yeah. What you can accomplish in community. Yeah. It didn't take just Isaiah, it didn't take just Chandler, it didn't take just me, it didn't take just Ashton. It took all of us working together, honing in on the different areas of expertise, and then also areas that we weren't as strong in, trying new things and working together to put together a final product. Yeah. I think I've heard this before, and early on in my career at Carolina, and it has always stuck with me. There was someone who said, when black men get together, it is not a good thing.
Wow.
And so that has always been playing, and I'm not like demonizing who said it, because maybe they had experiences that sort of spoke to that, and I don't want to minimize those experiences. But that played in my head, and so I was like, okay, what can we do as a black male group, as fraternity brothers, as the Union of Black Men, as all of these different things, or as black men coming together, what can we do to show that, okay, when black men come together, they are doing positive things, they are edifying those around them. And so that was a big takeaway for me too. And it makes me smile, like I get excited thinking about that. If we can just come together and work in vision and purpose, what can come of that?
And seeing how doors are still opening. Like,
yes.
We're far removed from the trip itself. Obviously, UBM is still working on creating this material, these videos and stuff, but we haven't been on the road for a few months, and opportunities are still, being created, which is amazing.
Yeah, I would like to piggyback on what he said, in terms of like just doing the good work, and how that can open up doors for how much is really possible. When you have a good purpose in mind, different things become possible that you never knew were before. And he talked about, being in his word, and I also want to piggyback on that. It's a verse, Mark 11, 24 and 25. It was, if you ask for something in prayer, know that if it is in God's will, then you've already received it.
My God. We weren't able to make it to church, but that was the word. That was the word.
And so I just think that's something so powerful, in terms of like when you're doing something for a good cause, and you aspire to do it, know that it's good as yours. Know that if you put in the work, you can make it happen, because the mission behind it is for the exact right reason.
Who taught you that? That's good seed. Good seed.
Okay. So now as like a final question, this is just like a very fun, say whatever you want to say for this. Just so after all the time you spent with each other, like on that road trip, if you had to give everybody like a role or give them like a superlative, who was the team mom, who was the team dad, like what would you give each person on the trip? And also why?
Team crash out. Team storm out. Oh goodness.
Oh.
I'm not
Oh, you can like discuss this and then like tell me your final answer.
Can we do it together, like as opposed to just one? I don't know.
Do we start with Ashton?
Yeah. What is Ashton?
What was Ashton?
Gosh.
Class clown. Can't
Class
be
clown.
favorite. No, I
I don't know what to say.
Obviously, as far as work, he was big on media.
Yeah.
Just like overall presence, Ashton, for those of you who know him, he's always lighthearted, joking. Just a
True or false sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah. So I would say he was like, the comedian of the trip. He always was able to, bring light to different situations. And of course, over the course of 20 days, you're like, oh, wow. Like, you've been on the RV, the shower is starting to be a little grimy. Like, the conditions aren't the greatest, but Ashton always adds that lighthearted effect. So I would never say he's the comedian.
Okay.
Little, he doesn't like when we say this, little bro.
Yeah. I would say that Isaiah is like the level head. Of course, we were talking about how,
He's the adult.
Yeah, he may be the adult. When, things, we get in arguments or have disagreements, he always talks, in a calm voice. He doesn't really raise his voice.
Except that one time.
Except for when,
I did it to him. I did it to him.
I had to get him one time. But,
Hold up, I got you too now. Let's put it in perspective here.
But yeah, Isaiah always brings that calm level head to any situation.
I would say if we can go to Chris next, just working so much, even behind the scenes when we're on these long road trips, like 12-hour drives and things like that, he's in his little bunk working or at the little table with his hotspot, still sending emails, still reaching out, trying to plan for the future, and making connections. Like some of this stuff, like we probably wouldn't have been in DC if he wasn't working when we're going through Texas and Mississippi, all these places. So I don't know if I have a superlative, but just like
I would call him the mayor.
the mayor.
He's like one of those people, you go out with.
I accept that.
Yeah, hold on. Let me cook.
You gonna be cooking in circles?
He's one of those people you go out with and like he's smiley, shaking everybody's hands.
Oh, like
and he knows everybody, and talking to older people, some politicians that are seasoned beyond their years. He's still able to connect with them just like anybody else. I think that he's really good for that. Establishing those connections with a lot of people that will have an impact on our journey.
Yeah, and I would say Chandler.
No, I call him Chandler. I don't do those nicknames.
Yeah, just like I don't know, in a way being like a backbone of the trip. He was going through a lot, like moving and like starting his job while we were going through planning and everything, but still just being present. Taking on some of that driving load, or just being willing to do what we needed to, and still having like a positive spirit during some of the unfortunate moments of the trip, but like a positive outward looking mindset, and just like helping us get through some of those moments, and then just being like willing to work.
Yeah,
I think that was important.
I think as well, like just sort of bringing together a new perspective. I think, and I'll speak on myself. Sometimes I get tunnel vision, and when I get tunnel vision, it's hard for me to hear new things. Chandler is good at. He didn't literally do this because he knows I would have to, but he's able to like shake you and be like, look, that's not gonna work. Let's see about this, whether it's like a location or an interview, because I was like trying to do like 10 interviews in a day or something. And we're like, look, everyone is dead. This is not gonna work. So he's really good at like saying, hey, look, this is not realistic, but this is. And even after that, putting the plan in place so that we can do it. Also,
I was gonna say balancing, we're so trying to work, but balancing the work with, we're on a road trip going across the country. We might not ever do this again. Let's enjoy this as well. So finding places, whether researching on TikTok, whatever he's doing, to find places where we can still go out and like enjoy ourselves. Like Bam Kazam. Yeah. We went to Buc-ee's.
Buc-ee's old.
Buc-ee's was so good.
My God. Jesus.
Yeah.
Everything. The jerky. I don't even like jerky.
Man.
That
Barbecue beef brisket on the board.
Yeah.
Brisket on the board. Oh, I'm sorry. So what is it? They had sauce on the board too.
Sauce on the board. Oh my God.
It's interesting. I want to. So you say that. This goes to another question you had earlier. When you are planning these efforts, it is important to balance the work with the experience itself. It's hard for me, speaking for me again, it's hard for me to like not try to just be we're working. But I think with Chandler, he was able to add that element of the experience as well, because that played into us doing the work well. If we're angry at each other, and we were angry at times, it affected the interview. And sometimes less people wanted to do the interviews because we were just not in the right spirit, the right headspace. But after we had like enjoyed each other's presence outside of the work of it all, because it was a lot of work on the road, all that stuff, like we were able to like put together a great product. The interviews were usually better, more excitement, cooler questions, more engagement, all that stuff. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you for watching this special interview with HBUNC and the Union of Black Men. I'm Sydney Phillips.
Isaiah Caldwell.
Christopher Lee Williams.
And Chandler Robinson.
Hello everyone, my name is Krystal Lacayo, the founder and president of HBUNC Media Group. Thank you so much for watching this segment with the Union of Black Men talking about their voter registration campaign this past summer. We know how important and how imperative it is for this election to get out and vote. We might be young, but our vote is so important. We have the first woman of color on the ballot as well as a former president. Everything from our rights to our ability to do different things around our town is very important and is on the ballot. We want to make sure you guys know how to register to get out and vote, and that you guys get out to actually vote. Y'all have to vote. It is so important. I cannot stress it enough. Again, thank you so much for listening to the importance of voter registration with the Union of Black Men, and we hope to see you at the polls. Thank you.